Hello, music lovers and blues lovers especially. In this video I will talk about MILTON RECTOR, a bass guitarist pioneer from Chicago, and I will do the video bilingual, but this time first in English and then in German, and you can read about it when it changes to German in the info of this video. So I start with the English version. MILTON RECTOR was born in Chicago in 1914, and he started on the upright, of course, on the upright bass, and played then the music that was in Chicago very popular. It was, of course, swing music, and as we know, in the 1930s or 20s, Chicago was a center of jazz. He had later in the 40s, I think after the war, he had a band of his own, and of course the bass guitar wasn't invented before 1951, so he played upright bass, and he played swing and a lot of other styles, from blues to pop standards. And at one time in the late 40s, Johnny Johnson, who became later the pianist of Chuck Berry, played in one of his bands, the MILTON RECTOR band. So MILTON RECTOR never recorded under his own name, and I think he did not record before 1955 or something like that. And so he never recorded under his own name. He was a kind of mentor and musical teacher and advisor to others, and one of the others was Lacy Gibson, Chicago blues guitarist who was 20 years younger than MILTON RECTOR, and he later recorded a lot of music in the 70s and 80s and from that on. But he also recorded with MILTON RECTOR in the 50s. The song is called "She's My Baby, Sugar Never Was So Sweet," and it was later covered in the early 70s by Freddie King. So MILTON RECTOR's best known records are probably "Help Me," which was recorded in the 1960s for the Chess label. It's probably the best known number. It was in the style of "Green Onions," which was recorded several months before that. "Help Me" recording, of course, in Memphis in the Stax studios with Booker T and the MGs, and it became a hit. And so Chess had the idea to combine Sonny Boy Williamson with a new Booker T sound, and Billy the Kid Emerson played organ, and so they recorded "Help Me" with MILTON RECTOR on electric bass. And they also recorded in a style of another very popular musician at the time, Jimmy Reed. They recorded "Bring It On Home," which is basically from the accompaniment a Jimmy Reed number. By the way, MILTON RECTOR recorded with Jimmy Reed, but mainly because it's not. I didn't find details on what records, but only on two records, and that the time of the recording was before Jimmy Reed's big breakthrough and crossover into the pop charts, and it was called "She Don't Want Me No More," and it is in my playlist. You find the playlist in the info of this video. Yes, mainly MILTON RECTOR recorded and did his studio work from 1955 to 1965, and his music style outside the recording studios was very different. He was a leader of a band called the Chicago Flames, and they had Lazy Gibson on the lead guitar, and they played some blues, but mainly jazz, soul, pop, standards and contemporary hits. I don't know the set list of these bands, but you can imagine when he played in the 50s and 60s and from then onwards, and when he played lounges and supper clubs, because they were more lucrative than the blues clubs on the south and west side of Chicago, so you can imagine the set list. Maybe this fact that he was not part of the blues scene outside the recording studios explains why he is not so much better known. Yes, it seemed he never played in blues clubs or taverns or something like that. Also, he recorded with a lot of blues men who played in the blues circuit, the blues clubs and so on. When the blues record industry dried up in the mid-60s, he disappeared from the studios, and I think it was not lucrative anymore for him to set his time plan for the record studios, and he preferred to play the clubs he always used to play. Here, as you can see in the playlist, he played with a lot of different artists. Billy Boy Arnold, I already mentioned Jimmy Reed, Billy the Kid Emerson. He played, for instance, on the Crazy About the Automobile record from the mid-50s, I think. But in the 60s he played with people like J.B. Lanner, Coco Taylor, which is a female singer, and he did a whole record for Prestige with the Muddy Waters Blues Band, and this is the blues band. You see, Otis Band, the blues never die. This is actually the Muddy Waters Band from that time, from 1963, which featured not only Otis Spann on vocal, but also James Cotton, the harmonica player, and even Muddy Waters played on this record under the pseudonym of Dirty Waters. See, that's the back side. Typical Prestige recording, which was different than the jazz recording. They were more specialized in recording jazz artists, and you hear that on that record. The jazz recording was usually more powerful, and here they were more decently sound. Yeah? So they didn't over amplify the harmonica. It was more like a blues band recorded in a jazz studio, which is very different, I think. So let's go on. Yes, this record here was recorded. This record here was recorded in 1963, and a year later, Muddy Waters did a record called The Folk Singer, and it was the first time people or recording companies use the term unplugged, because it was an acoustic session, of course. MILTON RECTOR did play electric bass, and so most of the songs were recorded for this album by Willie Dixon on upright bass, but there's one song, and that's also in the playlist, called Short Dressed Woman, and you hear not only MILTON RECTOR on electric bass, but also J.T. Brown, a saxophone player, who also, I think he also recorded with Fleetwood Mac on the recording, but I'm not sure. And but he doesn't play this time tenor sax, but clarinet, so it's a very interesting recording. Yes, his style, MILTON RECTOR style, you can describe in two phrases. One is less is more, and he played compared to the Earl Phillips, a Jimmy Reed drummer, who was also a jazzman. He played not so much fill-ins. He played walking bass and variations of patterns, but he did not do a lot of, or almost never, fill-ins or something like that. You get a good idea of him or of his playing in the song Don't Start Me Lying by Billy the Kid Emerson. It's also in the playlist, and you see that it has two parts and it has some breaks, and he does not, or he did not use the space for fill-ins, and he was almost, or he was not almost, he was the opposition of another younger upright bass player who later was known for his electric bass guitar skills, James Jamerson, who used every space to play a fill-in, I think. And would have been interesting to hear what Jamerson on bass guitar would have done with the Billy Kid Emerson song I just mentioned. I think Jamerson used the upright bass for his recording of Boom Boom by John Lee Hooker, so he played with bluesmen too, in order to keep him more simple, because probably he knew what worked with people like Marvin Gaye, Martha and the Vandellas, the Four Tops and the Temptations, might not have worked with John Lee Hooker, and so I think he forced him to play less, because you cannot do the things on an upright bass which you can do or more easily play on an electric guitar, electric bass guitar, excuse me. So that sums it up. Thank you for listening. Now the German version will follow. Some corrections. Green Onion came out in 1962 on the Stax label, and Help Me was recorded some months later in January 1963. Muddy Waters' pseudonym on the Otis Spann James Cotton recording was not Dirty Waters but Dirty Rivers, and J.T. Brown, the saxophone player, played on Fleetwood Mac in Chicago. Thank you for listening.